It's the week 6 edition of the Coach's Corner on Rivalry Family Media. I'm Todd Robbins. Great to have you along with us for yet another week of previewing action to come as Leominster gets set to travel on the road to battle a tough 4-1 Algonquin football team. More on that later. First, with Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates, we flashback and take a look at week 5 action, a 34-12 win for Leominster over Westboro. Blue Devils improved their record to 2-3 while Westboro falls to 1-4. Coach, great to have you back with us. In a lot of ways, it felt like that action last week was a game that your team needed. They needed to go out and win. And I feel like it was part of an overall story in week 5. If you were to look across the board, and we had kind of the benefit of being able to see where action began early in the week on Friday night and then where it ended by the end of Saturday night, all of the teams seemingly down the dance card last week that were supposed to win, if you will, won their football games, which is what good football teams do. Your team demonstrated they can be counted in that direction. It was a game that, if you were talking about it on paper, it was a game you probably should have won, and your team did. That's execution, ultimately, what you're looking for.
Yeah, just for us to go out there and execute with, some proficiency was nice. I think it was, much needed in terms of, our, in terms of our confidence level and in terms of, us just taking steps forward. Obviously, there's still some stuff to clean up with some of the turnovers and things like that. That's what we'll concentrate on this week is, cleaning up that stuff. But was happy with the execution and, I'm going to build on that for next week.
It was, of course, a positive that you had multiple situations, I suppose, where you had points go up on the board, they got called back, and it wasn't like your team, either caved or faltered or, became dejected. They just went right back out there. They ran a play again. And of those times, on 3 different occasions after setbacks, they were able to score again on either the very next play or within a couple of plays. How important is seeing that sort of response from your team?
It's huge, just to show that no matter what, I mean, we've had those situations this year where our back's been against the wall, and those kind of the same type of deal. Not with the game on the line here, but the kids have been frustrated when they score, whether it's a penalty or someone comes off the board. For them to go out there and just dial it up again and go run it and score is huge for them. The line did a really good job responding in the run game when we needed to, and we needed yards, we needed a play. The line dialed it up and really blocked well this week. So that was a huge thing that I was really looking forward to seeing on Saturday, and they came through.
We talked about it a little bit on the on-field edition of the Coach's Corner before we got started with the full-on radio broadcast. And of course, you made the decision last week to move more toward a conventional I formation offense that, of course, you're incredibly familiar with. The team is incredibly familiar with. Leominster historically is very, familiar with as well. And we talked about some of the reasons why. But as you went through and evaluated, obviously, the success of that maneuver, how did you feel about it after seeing it executed out on the field?
I felt good. I don't think I think we are on the right path. There's things we got to fine tune about it, but I think moving in this direction for us, makes a lot of sense in terms of what we're looking to do. And again, the skill level that we have and what our guys are good at. Caden Constant is very good at running downhill, so we want to get him running downhill. Same thing with Mackay. Those are guys that are very talented. We want to make sure that they get, the amount of blocks that they need, to get downhill and to break something big. And, we're going to try to keep on building on that. As we go on the next couple of weeks, we put in some base stuff out of it, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Last week, of course, you talked a lot about, and the cliche goes, right? You practice like you play. You saw a great week of practice out of Caden Constant last week, and then it replicated itself out on the field. How affirming is that to see when, of course, things translate from practice to game situation?
Yeah, I feel like it was his best game as a Blue Devil. We've asked him to do a lot of tough things that weren't natural to him and playing quarterback before that, and he's a natural running back. So I think this is the first time he really felt like at home in what he's doing and being confident in what he's doing. So I think that's huge for our offense and for Caden. So it was great, that he was able to do that against Westboro. We got some tougher teams coming up along the line here, and I think he's really got to grab the bull by the horns and say, this is where the time is to shine, and I got to get after it. And I'm looking to see him get better each week with what we're doing as well too. Running more confident, running harder, running faster downhill.
And I suppose that is kind of the next evolution. Though the first evolution is to get the execution. The next evolution, of course, is to see the execution happen when the game hangs in the balance.
For sure. I mean, and again, nothing against Westboro. Coach Beveridge is a great coach. And, he's building something there too, and they're going to be better. They've gotten better each week, this season too. I thought that that it was a good matchup for us in terms of, our ability to move the front. And, when we did that and we got guys of the second level where they needed to be, and, then the running backs reaped the benefits for it. So that was very encouraging to see that. But I, wanted to keep things in perspective for our guys that, it's not going to be to that degree every time. The intensity is going to get higher. The competition is tough the next 3 weeks, and they really need to build on what they did. And I think I've said it again and again, but that confidence level for our guys to be able to go and do that and know where they're stepping, know who they're going to is really going to pay dividends coming down the stretch here.
It is part of that coaching lexicon, though. There are going to be things you'll say over and over and over again, and probably over still. Nothing wrong with that in the slightest. That's part of what we do here. As you kind of look over to the other side of the ball, and once again, your defense did what you asked of it to do, but we like to call out some players maybe when we see some names that we haven't gotten to talk a little bit about, and you certainly got to call out the performance of Jared Viola, who stood out this week, getting himself a couple of +2 in the turnover margin individually when he got himself opportunities and created situations. He got the ball and he was able to bring the ball on back and give your offense another opportunity.
Yeah, Jared responded really well this week. He had a tough week last week against Shepherd Hill in terms of some of the run fits. He wasn't where he was supposed to be a couple times. He'd be the first one to tell you that they screwed it up, but he could have hanged his head and kind of let somebody else get in there, but he didn't. He took the bull by the horns again this week and had a great week of practice, and you saw that in the game too. Jared's another kid who's getting better each week. He didn't play a lot of football, the last couple of years. He came back out here as a sophomore and got some JV time last year, but as a first-year varsity player, is kind of feeling his way through things and getting better each week. So that was a big week for Jared. Also, Jack Fish on defense as well too. Had a number of great stops on the outside, played tough. Anytime anything was bouncing out to the perimeter, Jack, really did a good job of stopping that and making a play. So Jack really stepped up and had a great game as well on defense.
Love hearing that. I would be interested, of course, as you go back and look at the video, there are the things that stand out to us from a broadcast standpoint. And I've said to you before on air and off that, we're very ball centric. That's how how the broadcast, devolves. We go where the ball goes. That's where the camera goes. That's where the play-by-play call goes. And, thankfully my great team of, analysts between Billy, Kate, and the different coaches, Mike Pellin, and of course, Tom DiGeronimo are able to show me and point out and discuss some of the things that happen away from the ball. But when you go back and you look at your video and you see some of the different performances, maybe the things that we don't get a chance to call the attention to, who is it? Who are those people that maybe we're missing on that coverage? Who's out there making a big difference that we don't get to name check because, of course, it's not that standout where the ball goes kind of moment.
Yeah, well, I think I think you always can point to linemen when that comes to mind, right? I think Delmar Wright on the defensive side of the ball is really played well over the last couple of weeks. Gio Roman has come along and played really, really well too. So those are two guys that we're excited about on the defensive line that are really maturing well here and getting better as the season goes on. Offensive line wise, John Escabi, who's a junior, undersized kid, but probably technically one of our better players on the offensive line, does a great job. And then Tony Kendall, a sophomore, as our center too, is doing really well and holding his own against some big tough competition in the middle of that defensive line. So. Those guys are always unsung, but it's not, they're not looking for praise or anything like that at all. But you're not gonna, you're not gonna see them do anything fancy at all. But those guys are huge for us, and they, it's to see their maturation over, from camp till now, has been really exciting and looking, towards the future of the team. Both Gio and Delmar are both juniors as well too, so they'll be back next year. So, we've had a lot of guys that have been next man up that have just come up and played. And Coach Manoni, our defensive line coach, has done a great job with rotating defensive line guys in there too. So we've had a lot of guys keeping fresh legs in there, and it's helped us out in a number of situations. But the D line, I think, as a whole, was kind of an unsung group over the last couple of weeks. And I think they wanted to go out and prove themselves on Saturday, and they had a good game.
And we'll certainly be looking for that in the weeks ahead as well. You name check Tony Kendall, of course, who has been your center. And unfortunately, his name got called a few times as we were discussing the center to quarterback exchange, which is the unfortunate part of when those names come up, which is when something happens with the football, which is why I'm glad you point that out, certainly on his performance, both blocking and transitioning the ball. And we talked a little bit about this off the air, but we'll bring it on for this purpose. Talking about the distinctive differences between, of course, the shotgun snap or the pistol snap, whatever you want to call it, the snap of the quarterback back a handful of yards versus being right up under center, where it's more of the center directly handing the ball to the quarterback. You've, of course, had the opportunity to play in both of those circumstances and coach those two circumstances. What is the distinctive difference like? What is the difference sort of like? What's the growing pains like when you are developing a relationship between a quarterback and a center that maybe started in one versus another and then has to change dramatically when, of course, the formation changes and calls for that? What's that like? What's the timing like in the development? I know more repetition is certainly going to be coming in order.
Well, it's even just the regular shotgun and the under center, just two different types of snaps, and the way that Tony does it as well too. One, the ball rotates, the one that just comes straight back. So it's two different techniques when you do the two. Then you add in the snowplow package when we were 6 yards back instead of 4 yards back, so it's even a little bit of a deeper snap. So I'll take those bad snaps are on me. I didn't practice those long snaps as much as we needed to this week with Tony. That's something that we got to do a better job of this week. But yeah, it needs the attention. When we're doing special teams, I want our quarterbacks, if the centers aren't in the special teams and the quarterbacks aren't in the special teams, they should be taking snaps on the sideline. That's what we have them do. So a lot of that going on this week. It hasn't been something we've done a lot of over the last, up until about a week ago. So it'll get better with repetition here. But we also can't lose. We can't just be able to do one and not the other. We have to be able to transition and be able to do both within the game. So it's a work in progress, and we'll get there. Tony's really good at settling in and practicing and doing the reps until he gets it right. So he'll have a good week of practice here, and I have no problem. I don't foresee any problems going shotgun or snowplow or under center next week.
Two to tango when you're the quarterback and you're on the receiving end of something up under center versus, of course, being back in a shotgun. What's the distinctive feeling like when you have to either, in one case, in the sense when you're, kind of dropped back, you've got to essentially catch the ball and adapt to how that ball is being thrown essentially to you, spiraling back at you, versus, of course, the pressure points, the contact points when it's being handed directly to you. What's that like from a quarterback perspective that Jake Tossie would have been experiencing?
Well, I mean, that's the other thing too. It's on Jake's part. Jake hasn't had a lot of snaps under center as aside from last week, the week before. He's been traditionally a shotgun quarterback. So hand placement is different when you're catching the snap. The eye to hand-eye coordination when you catch a snap and you put it in your hands where you need to, whether you're handing it off, whether you're passing, and then under center. It's kind of like the recoil. There's a little bit of pressure and a snap to it that your hands have to be able to be soft to be able to adjust to it. And, and that's just takes reps. It's a certain type of feel. But if you're fighting the ball back, that's when you have some of those mishaps and some of those drop snaps that we had on Saturday night. But again, like I said, it's just reps, and paying attention to detail with each rep that we're in there, each rep of practice, each rep, when we're in the games, we're in a team. Cause there's certain mechanics with both. I mean, when you're taking the ball under center and you're around all that traffic with the offensive line and the backs moving, the quarterback's really going to get the snap, protect the ball on their body before they, hand it off or do what they want to do with it. And we just got to get better at doing that.
And those opportunities come with time, which, of course, time they will have as this week develops going into week 6 action with Algonquin. 34-12, Leominster winner in week 5 on homecoming night at historic Doyle Field. Improve their record to 2-3. Meanwhile, Westboro falls to 1-4. 7-4. Before we get into previewing week 6 action, Coach, we're going to talk a little bit about, what we've been discussing on the broadcast side of things, which relates to, of course, this new MIAA playoff scenario. We told people even here on the Coach's Corner, we'd discuss it a little more. We'd try to educate them as best we could, try to help them understand a little bit as we're coming to understand what this new experience is going to feel like. And, we saw, in this week, maybe some of what you hate to see, which is, of course, a situation where perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you win a football game thinking that your power rating at that moment would go up, whereby early indications are you are actually going to drop back 3 places going into this week. And so some of those factors going into it include your own record, the point differential, and then, of course, the success and point differential of the opponents that you are playing in order to calibrate, of course, your score, your opposition score, and then a total score that they end up giving you, whether that is plus, minus, or otherwise. Draft 1 said you were 27th last week. Draft 2, the early version that I saw that the Boston Globe has published and the MIA has yet to, said 30th going into this week for Leominster in Division 2. That is still 15 places or 14 places out of the promised land that you need to be in 3 weeks.
Well, I think they're a week behind on that too, because when I looked at the ratings, they hadn't calculated the Shepherd Hill game in there. So this might have been calculated with the Shepherd Hill game and not calculated with the Westboro game in yet too. So I'd have to double check on that too. So they were, they had us down in the first rankings that came out. They had us down as 1 and 2, and didn't have that extra game in there too. So I'll have to double check to see where they're at with that. Because that might be, part of the issue as well. But yeah, they're you look at it, you kind of scratch your head a little bit. You look at Division 2, and you have, Lincoln Sudbury was up at the top of the list for Division 2, and then you had, if the playoffs started, they'd have to play Catholic Memorial at seed number 16, which is,
what a deal, what a draw,
what a draw. So there's a lot of things that got to shake out. Each week there's going to be a lot of movement. So we're by no means close to figuring this thing out yet before the end of the season. There's no sure thing right now. Still 3 games left to play. And a lot of points out there for grabs. So we control our own destiny. So we just got to go out and play and take it. Again, coach speak, 1 game at a time. That's all we can worry about right now. We're halfway there in terms of qualifying for the playoffs. The only thing that we can worry about right now is Algonquin and get ready for them and go out and put our best foot forward against them.
I think, coach speak or not, that is the reality. We're all stuck with this system, at least for the foreseeable future. There's no changing that aspect of things. So you are correct. The only thing you can do is provide the best possible record you can and hope that the math breaks in a direction that is in your favor. The point that you were making about, of course, Lincoln Sudbury being at the top, Catholic Memorial framing in the bottom of that first draft that came out last week, 1-16. I think the problem with that first draft, what it pointed to and ultimately led to questions that were out on social media, and they were fair questions getting asked by media types as well as by, the casual fans, is what would or why would a Central Mass or a Western Mass AD have voted for a system that would have 16 teams from east of 495 at the top of any division? And it's a fair question. It certainly was not how it was sold. I can certainly say I was a proponent of what was sold and what was being advertised as where this was supposed to go. But at the same time, if this is the reality, that the weighting of these schedules is going to weight Eastern Mass schools heavier, better, or what have you, it certainly doesn't do a lot for those that live in Central and Western Mass and play in Central and Western Mass to advocate for wanting to be in a system like this.
No, and that's something that that we weren't aware of. Obviously, looking at this as well. This is going to be an equitable system that everybody's going to get a fair shot with everything. So again, I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that this all shakes out and it ends up going the way, that you're going to have teams from each region representing, in the top 16. So hoping that falls in that direction. But yeah, it's not going to be very popular moving forward if it's going to be very heavy Eastern Mass, and Central and Western are being, left holding the bag at the end of the day. So hoping that we see some equitable changes in it and, some, whatever happens in the next couple of weeks, the recalculations, hoping to see some more regional, Central Western Mass teams in there.
And while we're on the subject of strange things that could be happening, rumor floated out there on social media via the media types that there is consideration underway with some of the private religious institutions that, do sponsor athletics that, in Massachusetts play under one banner. Everybody plays under the MIAA banner and are slotted just like any other. Public, private, doesn't really matter. Only really prep schools get kind of sent off into their own situation. But anybody who is a traditional high school does get slotted and plays under MIAA rules. There is now conversation out there that some of these religious institutions are considering potentially breaking away. And of course, it leads a lot of questions as to what would happen if it went to more of a New York style system where the public schools play in one league and the private schools play in another, and never the twain shall meet as it relates to a postseason system. It would certainly be a major shakeup in our lifetime, as obviously you and I have both seen a system that has always been a mixed and calibrated system together. I can only imagine what it would be like if you were to pull the St. John's of Shrewsbury would be the closest one that you would think of, but maybe potentially a St. Bernard's is included in that, a St. Paul's, and then obviously the Eastern Mass ones have to be considered as well, St. John's Prep and Catholic Memorial, and on and on and on that list goes. What do you think would happen? How would that change the landscape here?
Well, I think it'd be significant. We've gone back and forth with my own personal opinion of, whether there should be like a Super 8, with, the Catholic Conference, especially Division I teams. It's, there is a pretty big power differential there. I mean, you obviously have some public schools that can go out there and compete and do really, really well. But I mean, you've seen the shift to, have it be, a lot of those teams are your real powerhouses. The Zavarians, the St. John Prep, the St. John's Preps, the Catholic Memorials. I mean, they get kids from all over the place. They have a lot of resources that some schools don't. And, those teams are tough to play. And I mean, and not a knock on them. They're doing things the right way and they're trying to be successful. And, I'm not opposed to that at all. It's just, to have them all under the MIA umbrella, it's tough for public schools to compete and compete at that level. So, part of me would think it's more of a fair scenario to have them have their own conference and be able to battle it out there. But then you like the competition trying to go against those Catholic schools as well too. So we'll have to see what happens. I saw that Matty Felt put that out there earlier this weekend, and it was very intriguing. So let's see what news pops up with that over the week. I'm sure we'll hear some more stuff, but it didn't sound like it was something that's going to happen, very, very quickly.
Correct.
But definitely something that is intriguing. I'd like to hear the reasons why they're considering that as well too.
Certainly would change the landscape as people do start to look beyond the geographical borders of Massachusetts. The ideas that get kind of brought into this overall circumstance that we are looking at. Before we put that topic to bed, I would say only, when you're looking for a case in point, and I think about the history and all of the great years and battles that St. John's of Shrewsbury has had with all of the teams here in central Massachusetts when they were a part of this. And I know it was endlessly debated, about them being the haves and that they were so far out in front. Certainly as they have gone east to try their fortunes as part of that larger existing religious institution conference, they have found a way that, I look only at last week's scoreboard, a 44-0 loss to Catholic Memorial. I don't know that I often see St. John's of Shrewsbury week in and week out in double-digit scenarios where they are barking uphill. So it certainly, if you were to say they were a very strong team when they were part of what was going on here in central Massachusetts, if you were to make that more of a public school example, how would a public school of a certain quality fare having to play private schools from Eastern Mass that have some of those advantages? And I mean, one need only look at the results of a school that can do things a little differently and see that maybe they're not having such an easy time of it. It's an interesting scenario. We'll see where the years take us over the changing landscape. So we move to week 6 action. Algonquin, a 4-1 team. The now Algonquin football team coming into this one with a new coach, at least so far as we're concerned. Last time Leominster played Algonquin, it was Coach Taylor Allen that was head coach. Coach Taylor Allen has relocated to elsewhere in the country. His brother, Coach Mark Allen, who was on on the coaching staff previously, has now ascended to head coach. We're looking forward to obviously getting to know him a little bit and see what wrinkles and changes he brings to obviously this Algonquin team. Whatever he is doing, it's a 4-1 football team that certainly is looking very, very good. And like their fortunes have changed significantly from even where they were in this spring season we saw in the same calendar year.
Yeah, no, it's, things change, but they stay the same. Mark was there as the defensive coordinator before when Taylor was there too. And Mark's a good coach. They come from a football family. Dad coached at Holy Cross. And so the pedigree is there. I think he's got good staff around him, and he's done really well with the kids that he has there right now. They've picked a few things that they do really, really well, and they execute really well with them, and don't put themselves in situations where they're not sending their kids up to fail at any with anything that they're doing right now. They're really good at with what they do in their wheelhouse. Quarterbacks are a really good player. I think the whole offense kind of goes through him. Both run game and pass game as well. And they've the thing that stands out to me is this is probably the toughest Algonquin team that I've seen. Not that I've been coaching in Central Mass for that long, but over the last few years, this is a tough football team. They're tough up front. They're tough on defense in the box. And they're playing with their confidence right now is sky high. They're playing with a lot of as it should be. I mean, they beat some good teams and they've executed well and they've come back. They've faced adversity and and they're playing good football. So they're feeling it right now. And that's something that we're going to have to go into their place, and deal with.
And of course, if you're looking for Rio Ferguson and the team that you knew some months and a couple of years ago now, seemingly a lifetime ago on the other side of this COVID scenario we've been dealing with, delete all of that from your memory banks. This is a different looking Algonquin team that is much more than one football player, but there is one that stood out to you that we talked about a little bit that you just alluded to, and that's Coleman Hostage, a lefty quarterback that is leading the charge, being able to both distribute the football in the passing game while also creating opportunities for a running game with three backs coming out of their backfield.
Yeah, everything kind of goes through Coleman in terms of, where he's handing the ball off, kind of sleight of hand, play action, drop back pass. They have kind of running back by committee. So it's really tough to kind of key on, any one particular guy because they do a good job of, lining up in something balanced and something simple and being able to borrow blockers and, and get to a point of attack and outnumber you there. So, I think they do a really good job scouting, a really good job of coming up with a game plan and how they want to attack you. And, like I said, the offense going through Coleman Hostage is, it's dangerous. The kid can throw, he can run. He plays with, a lot of confidence. He doesn't get rattled. He goes out there and he battles. And, it's a tough kid that we're going to have to overcome. He's seen adversity this year. They were down against Doherty early. They played Neshoba tough. They lost in Neshoba. They don't want to do that. They don't want to lose again. So he's a tough kid. He's playing well.
You talked a little bit about this three-back formation and the way you described it to me. It sounds a lot like a best connection I can make would be a Wachusett offense that Leominster has seen fairly regularly in the past.
Yeah. Yep. It's kind of double tight, three receivers, kind of a T formation. Three running backs and kind of a T formation. And they, they'll pull linemen, they'll use backs to block, to kick out and block, and they can, force you to play kind of a balanced look, and then they borrow blockers at the point of attack. A lot of a lot of the same lines of what Shepherd Hill does, just out of a different different formation, different set of athletes. But they make things tough on you as a defense in terms of reading your keys and making sure that you're getting defenders to the point of attack to make a play, and then they force you to wrap up and make a tackle. And they're going to force our defensive backs to make tackles too. So it's a tough matchup.
We talk a little bit about, of course, your offensive side of the ball and what, of course, evolutions you've been working your way through. What are you going to be looking at across the field defensively?
Kind of the same what we've looked at the last couple of weeks. 4-4 defense. That's kind of their base. Sometimes they'll walk those outside linebackers up, kind of give it almost like a 6-2 kind of look. 6 guys on the line, 2 linebackers. So, And that's kind of what Neshoba did as well a little bit too. So it's nothing, that we haven't seen. I'm sure they'll have some wrinkles we're going to have to figure out and see how they're going to play, tight end side versus receiver open side and stuff like that. But, I think like I said, they do what they do and they do it well. So I expect them to kind of stay, within that 4-4 family, and whether they're going to bring more pressure or play a little bit more man coverage, we'll have to see. But I don't expect them to, get out of that, that defensive structure very often, if at all.
The thing about when we get to this point in the season, here we are now into the 6th week of this 8-week regular season. You're kind of at this place now where, of course, there's a lot of video that exists about every team that you're going to be seeing and yourselves as we kind of move your way to this place. So this is the time where coaching staffs get tested a little bit, where they've got to go a little bit deeper, dig a little bit deeper, and try to come up with the 1 or 2 things that maybe you haven't seen before, or maybe they have yet to show at this point in the year.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's desperate, going through all the film that they have, trying to find a chink in the armor for everybody, and being able to, expose that. We're doing the same thing. I'm sure that they're doing the same thing right now, trying to go through all our stuff. And, and I think that the thing that we've done, and not this is a great thing, is we've had our offense has been look different pretty much from week to week. Not that that's planned. We're working things out by necessity, and and doing what, like we talked about at the top of the broadcast, doing what kind of fits our guys the best and set them up for success. So but it does give them a lot to worry about, because just because we haven't run in a couple of weeks doesn't mean that stuff's out of our repertoire and out of our playbook. So I think they have a lot to worry about in terms of our skill guys, who can get the ball, how we're going to cover things. And then on our front, on the offensive side of the ball, we got to block stuff up. If they're going to bring pressure, we have to recognize it, block it up, be able to make time if we need to pass, and be able to get to the second level if we're running backs, and they make that difficult. They got some tough players up front, and they have some 2 interior linebackers that are aggressive, and they like to come downhill and make some plays, and they read their cues really, really well. A lot like Romeo Holland from Shepherd Hill, and as soon as they make a read, they're off from their running, they're getting to the ball. So it's an aggressive defense, and we're going to have to be ready to combat that.
And you may have just made an identity crisis, the first time ever, sound like a good thing in the grand scheme of things, as things may
always
may
silver
go.
lining, Todd. I'm always silver lining.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that, Coach. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, as always. I look forward to getting back with you again next week for week 7. Week 6 action, it's Leominster and Algonquin for you, beginning at 6 o'clock on Friday night with our countdown to kickoff on the K-Zone, AM 1280, 105.3 FM, and WPKZstream.com. Leominster TV will be along as well with their television coverage, and our combined broadcast begins at 10 minutes till the top of the hour, or just before that 7 o'clock kickoff, so 6:50 on the channels of Comcast and Verizon for Leominster TV. Replays of the weekly action available throughout the week and weekend on Leominster TV as well as out there on YouTube. Looking forward to, of course, another great one between Leominster and Algonquin. And of course, no week starts and no week begins without the Coach's Corner. Preview right back here again next week on the Coach's Corner for week 7 action as well. For Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates, I am Todd Robbins saying thank you so very much for joining us. And until next week, so long, everybody.